Hello there, YouTubes. How the devil are we all? I'm very well. Thank you for asking. Now, today, as the title would suggest, I'm going to be talking to you about a guy called Jonathan McIntosh. Now, he's quite an interesting character in a way. And there's a lot of... he's essentially... a lot of the manosphere think he's the kind of puppet master for Anita Sarkeesian and feminist frequency and all of that. But I'm not going to get into all of that kind of, dare I say, conspiracy theory type thinking, right? That's not what I'm here today to talk about. He sent out a tweet a couple of days ago, and I'm going to show you that in a moment. But to give you a little bit of background, right? He does videos and he makes some interesting contributions to discussions, right? So I don't want to be like all part of the dog pile of him, because there's loads of people out there. If you want to go and see like hate videos on him and stuff, there's plenty of shit out there. But he's, and when I say he makes interesting contributions, anyone in theory can make an interesting contribution, can't they? Like in theory, a neo-Nazi can make an interesting contribution to a discussion or a debate or discourse or whatever, or any other D word, I suppose. But it doesn't make it necessarily like a good point or a valid point or whatever. It can be just interesting. It sparks an idea or a thought in your head, or makes you look at things in a slightly different way, or sparks a completely different thought on something completely other to what was being discussed. So and McIntosh, I think, does that. I don't necessarily agree with a lot of what he has to say, but he's not like the worst in the world. And of course, there's the full McIntosh thing, one of the memes that the internet has created, the sort of Gamergate people have created, which essentially is a play on the "you never go full retard" thing from Tropic Thunder, where the Robert Downey Jr. as the black guy character says it to, oh god, does he say no to Ben Stiller? Spoilers. But I mean, if you're interested in sort of gender politics on YouTube, which I assume if you're subscribed to me you are, then you've definitely seen that clip, because yeah, because it's a favorite, one of the favorites, along with you know, Big Red shouting it's the patriarchy, fuckface or whatever. Yeah, but McIntosh annoys me in a number of ways, right? There was the obvious hypocrisy, and again, you've probably heard it, but it's worth reiterating that when Osama bin Laden died, and by the way, this is going to be a bit more of a rambly version than when I put it on my main channel. Anyway, when Osama bin Laden died, McIntosh came out and said that it was wrong to celebrate the death of passing of a person. Now, that is a perfectly reasonable and decent moral position to hold, right? It's not one I hold to. I celebrated like fuck when Osama bin Laden died. That's where it's a huge advancement, albeit symbolic, advancement for civilization and human decency. You almost can't help that, really, can you? That kind of opinion. You feel one way or the other. It's not something you necessarily consider like a life and death thing or whatever. It just, when I heard the news, I was overjoyed. I thought it was fucking brilliant. I was really happy, and I went out that night and got really fucking drunk and celebrated, because again, a symbolic victory for humanity over barbarity. But anyway, that's by the by. But yeah, like I say, it's, even though it's not a moral position I hold to, it's perfectly fine. But you do have to be consistent with it. And McIntosh, of course, wasn't. When Christopher Hitchens died, again, not a man I liked him in certain ways, disliked him in many others. But he basically laughed his bollocks off at Hitchens' death, which, you know, I mean, I'm paraphrasing. He didn't literally laugh his bollocks off, but like he said, oh, fuck him, basically, which is a douche, hypocrite move. But whatever. The particular tweet that he sent out the other day, though, is, I think, somewhat indicative of a negative aspect of online feminism, which I think needs to be tackled for the good of feminism, basically. Because unfortunately, there are all too often, there are a lot of sort of leading feminists, as it were, and I know no one's elected Jonathan fucking fly, piss off. I know no one's elected Jonathan McIntosh as like the leader of anything. But you know, he's one of the sort of leading voices, I suppose, of feminism online. And also often those people don't want to engage. They don't want to discuss stuff with people from opposing point of views. And that's, I think, a really negative attitude to have, really. I don't think that helps anybody, really. I think, without getting too flowery about it, it's one of the most beautiful things of being human, of having that cognitive power to engage in, you know, dialectic discourse or whatever. That you can take in opposing views without necessarily accepting those opposing views as true, but taking them on board and analysing them and all the rest of it, rather than just dismissing them or whatever. And unfortunately, he's one of the archetypes of this, unfortunately. I'm going to share the screenshot now, if I can. Where are we? Right. Boom. It says there, right. I think that's, is that done? Its thing? I don't know. Present to everyone. Fuckface. Okay. Right. There it says, dear Twitter dudes, in my mentions, denying the gender wage gap will earn you an instant block. This is your one and only warning. Now, there's a couple of interesting points within this, right? Firstly, this is your one and only warning. I don't think anyone's that fucking bothered, Jonathan, to be honest, mate. It's such a huge privilege for you to not be blocked by you or something. Fuck off, fly. I'm being attacked by a fly here. This is ridiculous. I'm about a million times bigger, you cunt. Anyway, sorry, right. Yeah, and secondly, because denying the gender wage gap, right, I'm firmly on board with the concept that the gender wage gap is an actual real thing. I don't think it's the 77 cents to the dollar figure that's unfortunately often bandied about, but there clearly is significant issues going on there, right? But it's a very nuanced subject, right, with a lot of grey areas and stuff. And unfortunately, McIntosh really doesn't do himself or anyone else justice. I'll stop presenting now. There we go. Right, I'm back. He doesn't do himself or anyone else any particular favours by essentially being a sort of smarmy twat about it. Like, if you disagree with me, I'm going to, you know, block you. And he does it as part of that discussion. He started saying, comparing people who deny the wage gap with flat earthers, right? Which is ridiculous. I mean, like I say, it's quite a nuanced area with lots of grey areas and stuff, and there's debates to be had on specific things. I don't think you necessarily, like this should say, there's absolutely no issue. Like, anyone who does that is ridiculous and doesn't understand the basic realities of life. There are clearly issues involved. But whether you want to get engaged in some of the more semantic arguments about whether it should be called a wage gap or, I don't know, like a gender expectation gap or whatever, because women are sort of funneled by societal pressures into lesser paying jobs or whatever you want to call it, there are clearly issues at play here, right? And so it's worth discussing. And not just that, but so like I say, it's ridiculous to compare them to flat earthers, because the earth is demonstrably so obviously not flat. And everyone around the globe knows that. Boom, totally stole someone else's joke there. But also to say that you shouldn't ever discuss with flat earthers or whatever is ridiculous, because it's only by engaging with those opposite point of views that you can show how ludicrous they are. Well, it's not the only way, but it's a prime way, because you can make them look foolish, especially with flat earthers, because the evidence is so ridiculously overwhelming, right? So why not? If it's so obviously on your side, why not debunk it, right? And unfortunately, this is a thing that I find sort of too regularly within feminist circles, and I wish it would stop. And I don't say this to hate on Jonathan McIntosh or on feminists who don't engage. I get there are perfectly good reasons. I get that dogpiling, look, trust me, I've received dogpiling fuck tons of times. I've sort of grown to revel in it, actually, but like one of my new phrases is, if you pour hate on me, I grow. and that's basically sort of in a spiritual, intellectual sense. That's sort of true. And I don't mean spiritual in like a religion, like a my own spirit or whatever. Yeah. So I get that the dogpiling happens, right? I don't think you have to be engage with everybody about everything, but it's the idea that you're going to automatically block them. But you don't even have to block them; just ignore them. I don't see that denying what you call the wage gap or whatever. And even though, like I say, I agree that the wage gap is a thing. It's a fucking huge problem. It needs to be dealt with. I don't know that you're ever going to be able to completely equalise everything. I'm not a utopianist in that sense, but I think there are lots of steps you can take to try and, ensure, the old line about equality of opportunity and all of that. But to deny, but to say that if you disagree with me, I'm just going to block you, is stupid and pig-headed and unnecessary. Because, like I say, you can just fucking ignore them. You don't have to just block everybody. I mean, if they've been abusive, that's fair enough. I don't like. I'm a lot freer with the block button on Twitter than I am on other social media. Like on YouTube, I've blocked very few people. But on Twitter, if you're just being a cunt, I'll just get rid of you. It's not the end of the world. But I won't do so just because you're disagreeing with me. And I don't think anyone else should either. I think that's ultimately counterproductive because you make your side look like it's hiding something. If you're not open about what you believe and the evidence upon which those beliefs are based, then you make it look like you don't have evidence on your side. And there is plenty of evidence to suggest that there are some issues involved here. So put it out there. Anyway, I thought I'd bring that to you. I'm again, like I say, I'm not trying to hate on anybody or be a prick or whatever. Although I'm sure some people will accuse me of it anyway, because that's what happened. It's the internet. I did an article on problematic people. The website is linked below. You can go look it up about Muslim terrorists in Britain, like, that had been allowed to travel to Britain and stuff, from a Pakistani terrorist organization, right? So I wasn't implying that all Muslims were X, Y, or Z, but I still got called an Islamophobe for it, which is ridiculous. So some people need to learn what things mean, it seems. So it's the internet, right? I know I'm going to get called all sorts, but I'm genuinely not trying to hate on anybody or even say that Jonathan McIntosh is like an evil person. He's just a bit of a twat, So anyway, yes, thank you all for listening, watching, all the rest of it. Pip pip.